How powerful is Cox Internet? Powerful enough to let your band members in Vegas, Phoenix, and Rhode Island jam like you're all in the same garage. Get Cox Internet powered by fiber with America's fastest download speeds. It's internet built for tomorrow, today. Cox, always building better. Cox Internet is connected to the premises via coaxial connection. Speeds vary and are not guaranteed. Cox terms and other restrictions may apply. Analysis by Ookla Speed Test Intelligence Data. Fixed median download speeds. US Q3 2023.
The South Dakota Stories, Volume 5. South Dakota seemed like the perfect place to unplug. But I ended up connecting to the world around me. A world where each sunset was painted, where I felt adventure's pulse with every step, and where cold water trickling, pine swaying, and grunting bison became my favorite soundtracks. I just wish I didn't have to leave. There's so much South Dakota, so little time.
It's time to get inside the Giants Huddle.
Let's go, let's go, let's go.
On Giants.com.
I like it, I like it.
And the Giants mobile app.
Boom, give me some juice.
Part of the Giants Podcast Network.
Let's roll.
Welcome to another edition of the Giants Huddle Podcast, brought to you by Citizens, the official bank of the New York Football Giants. John Schmuck, Paul Dottino at the NFL Combine in Indianapolis. We're joined by former NFL general manager, now the front office insider for ESPN, Mike Tannenbaum. Mike, good to see you, man. How are you?
All right, good to see you guys.
Morning.
All right, so I'm going to take the Giants GM hat. I'm going to steal it away from Joe Shane. I'm going to put it on Mike Tannenbaum's head. What would be your overall strategy for trying to build out the Giants roster this offseason?
Yeah, fix the quarterback position long term. You know, they have a quarterback that obviously in flashes has done, reasonably well, but, one of the most important aspects of playing the quarterback position is to be available. And, unfortunately, for whatever reason, it just hasn't worked out between the knee and the neck. And if we're trying to build something great and sustainable and dynastic for the next 10 years and we're competing against fill in the blank, Dallas, Philadelphia, Detroit, Green Bay,
San Francisco.
Like, that's a high bar right now in the NFC. It's a really high bar, and they need somebody that can compete at that level.
Okay, now how do you go about it then, right? Because I think
scour.
There's a really good
scour.
Because I think the good chance the top three guys are gone in the top three, right? So then scour. What do you mean by that?
You scour.
Give me the full lowdown.
It's systematically looking at every rock every day, and you try to put together different scenarios. Like two of the best quarterbacks right now in the AFC are, Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes. Both were traded up for. So, I think one of the more interesting inflection points in this year's draft is New England's evaluation of Mac Jones. Are they happy with him? Do they try to go from 3 to 1? Do they back out? To me, I look at Atlanta and Minnesota, like they're fascinating to me. Like, could one of those teams come up to number 3? And if I'm the Giants, I don't want to be leapfrogged by either, Atlanta or Minnesota. I'm assuming, let's say they lose Kirk Cousins in Minnesota to, some other team. So, to me, if I'm the Giants, I'm not sitting where I am. Like, I'm trying to get one of those 3 guys and doing everything I can to get that done.
Okay, I just want to follow up what the price would be. Sorry, Paul.
No,
in terms of moving up from 6 to 3. We saw the Jets do that, right, to get Sam Darnold. I think it was 3 twos.
Yep.
Everything's seen inflation over the past few years. Have we seen the quarterback price inflation as well? Do you think that's going to be in the ballpark?
Yeah, it depends on, when New England's phone rings and it's, Atlanta. And if I'm New England, I could get a 1 from Atlanta and still come out of this with a frontline offensive tackle, a really good receiver, 2 positions of need for the Patriots. I'm definitely doing that.
Because there's going to be heavy competition for that pick, right?
I would think so.
Yeah.
And I think the 4th quarterback is going to come out of this being J.J. McCarthy, and I can see him being in the top 6 as well. And who knows, maybe the Chargers bail out at number 5. And
I can see that too.
Yeah, so, this is going to be a fun couple months of really interesting speculation.
Well, you just kind of answered part of my question, Mike, and that is if you can't get one of those top 3 by moving up that high, where do you think that line is for the rest of that second group, and how would you separate that second group? I happen to be a Bo Nix guy myself, but I know a lot of people are on McCarthy's train.
Yeah, I think Bo Nix has a chance. He's had 2 great years in Oregon, so I think he has a chance to be a good player. I just think, just for like a fun discussion, if you took J.J. McCarthy and Jaden Daniels and flipped where they were, how much J.J. McCarthy's numbers would look different, and so would Jaden Daniels. And again, I think they're both great players. Point being is, like, the way Michigan play, I went to a lot of their games and practices over the last 2 years, and in the biggest moments, he played exceptionally well. He has a great arm, good athlete, really smart, natural leader. He was, really the CEO of that team, and, that team was loaded with 17 prospects here. So he's going to go really high. Someone's going to go up and get him once we go through this whole process. And, again, if I'm the Giants, I just got to be really careful because again, I could see somebody trading in front with the Chargers for him.
You're ready for a change. Payday comes early with Citizens, so go to that retreat. New you moves to the country. Now you're raising goats and launching a lifestyle brand. Are you ready for all that life brings?
Would you be comfortable at 6 if McCarthy is there and you could also select either your top offensive tackle, I'm assuming that's Joel for you, or your, assuming Marvin Harrison Jr. is gone, either Neighbors or Dunze, whichever one is your favorite.
Yeah.
Would you feel good picking McCarthy over one of those other premier players at what's also a very important position?
Yeah, those are all great players. Like, this is a really good draft.
Right, that's why I asked the question.
Yeah. But again, like, to me, the threshold is, like, until we get the quarterback position solved, really nothing else matters. And again, the bar in the NFC is so hot, really high that, again, they're not alone. It's not just the Giants, but, it's other teams in there like a New Orleans, a Tampa Bay. Like, for us to get to where we're going to go, like, you look at that Green Bay offense and how they finished the season, like, they may have the best offense in the conference next year. And you look at Philly, they're in the Super Bowl 2 years ago. Dallas led the league, in offense. Detroit was a whisker away from being in the Super Bowl. You got San Francisco and all their weapons. Like, the bar is high.
We've heard what you think about the quarterback situation, Mike, but it seems to me offensive line then must be your next priority for the Giants after that, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Second round, can you get guys there that you feel could be significant upgrades?
Yeah, I do. And look, we'll see like where someone like Powers Johnson goes from Oregon. I think he had such a good Senior Bowl. I think he's a top 20 player now, but he's big, strong, athletic. If we were sitting here like around Thanksgiving and be like, oh, he's a great second-round offensive lineman, but I don't think he'll be there. But some of the tackles will be there. There's so many good tackles. Like, how lucky do they get? We'll see, a guy like Tyler Guyton. Look, he's probably a top 20 pick too. I thought he was maybe, bottom of first round. I don't think that's the case anymore.
Great athlete. People are going to fall in love with his testing, whatever he does.
He actually reminded me of DeBrickashaw Ferguson, the way he moved. Like, very, like, maybe not like has the best anchor in the world, but just great movement skills, for example.
Let me follow up on the offensive line situation.
Absolutely.
We believe that the Giants have a bigger need on the interior at guard if you think that Neal is going to fix himself at tackle.
That was going to be my question.
Or do you just go right after a tackle and say, look, we just got to get that fixed and maybe even think about moving Neal inside?
Yeah, I don't think there's anything wrong moving Neal inside. He can obviously anchor, and maybe some of his limitations from foot quickness, like those are going to be minimized when you slide inside. So, look, if they drafted Joel, and now you got, you have hopefully for them now ideal tackles with him and Andrew Thomas for the next 10 years, and if you put Neal inside for the next 2 seasons, I don't think that's, a bad situation.
Giants need to address guard, though, too, right? So do you like the idea, since it's not a premium position and the cost is generally a little bit lower, to attack a position like guard to get one of the better veterans in free agency because it's not going to break the bank on your cap?
Yeah, I mean, if you could do that in an effective way, but I think you could kill 2 birds with 1 stone by drafting a tackle, putting a right tackle. And I think you look at a guy like Joe Alt, and there's a ton of really good tackles, but there's no holes in his game. Like, I don't see how he's not a frontline guy for a number of years.
And no fear moving him side, swapping left and right?
I don't think so. I've seen that too many times in my career. Like, for a guy of his ability, I'd be surprised if that was an issue.
All right, let me go back to the free agency thing that John just mentioned a second ago. We talk about your own free agents. It's always important to keep your own guys in-house. Barkley and Xavier McKinney, 2 very high-profile guys, Mike. How much do you stretch the rubber band with the extra money in the salary cap to try to keep one or both?
Yeah, I think Saquon's really important. I think you look at Dak Prescott of Dallas, you look at Saquon of the Giants, very similar. They always say the right things. In those markets, it's so important. Like, look, in my opinion, they just paid the wrong guy last year. I think Saquon Barkley is a guy that should never leave the program because he's so talented. He's a great leader. And by the way, like, I'll say the quiet thing out loud. Like, every single player in that locker room is saying, if they don't do right by him, who will they do right by? Because he is beyond reproach as a player. He's beyond reproach as a person. And to me, you do everything within reason. You throw out that whole notion, well, he's a running back. Like Christian McCaffrey's been a big difference maker for the 49ers. And look, I know there's been some injuries, but his pass protection's gotten better. He's great in space. He scores points, which is the object of the exercise. And if you're going to, tip the scales a little bit for somebody, like they go out and get Darren Waller. He had an injury history. He gets hurt. Like, now you don't pay Saquon Barkley, like that's sending a message to your locker room that I'm not so sure that like is the right one. And that's something you got to be really careful of from a leadership position.
The Huddle is brought to you by Citizens, the official bank of the Giants. From game day to every day, Citizens is made ready for Giant fans with insights, guidance, and solutions. Learn more at citizensbank.com. And hey, Giant fans, score a taste touchdown with Hellman's, the official mayonnaise of the New York Giants. Mike, I'm fascinated by how this running back free agent market is going to play out. Not necessarily what the final numbers are going to be. That's not interesting to me. The pace of when these guys get signed, who goes first, who jumps at maybe a deal that isn't ideal just to get the first one before the slots start filling up. There are so many good guys that are probably expecting, 7-figure, 8-figure deals in free agency. How do you think that running back market's going to play out?
Yeah, it's a great question because I was thinking the same thing. You look at Tony Pollard, Josh Jacobs, Saquon, Derrick Henry, like they're hurting each other because like there's such a supply. I think a team could be patient again, but that where I go back to the intangible. Like Saquon's worth more to the Giants, I think.
Totally agree
because for the reasons we just discussed. Mm-hmm. If I'm the Dallas Cowboys, like I go after Saquon Barkley. He's a better player than Tony Pollard. I was wrong. I thought Tony Pollard was going to play better than he did, but he's bigger. He could finish games, and if I'm Dallas and I can help myself and hurt a division rival, I'm going to do that. And look. Do the New York Giants want to see Saquon Barkley with a star on the side of the helmet?
Or a bird, by the way. You don't want to see either one of those.
No, that's a great point. I didn't even think about Philadelphia. But, if you're thinking about, like, hey, we're paying $1.05 for $1 here, one of the reasons you're doing that, you're sending the right message to your program. But more than that, like, I'm also making sure he doesn't go to a division rival.
All right, we left Xavier McKinney on the table. I do want to revisit him because the second half of last season, he was one of the Giants' best defensive players.
Yep.
At the same time, people say, well, how can you spend that much money on a safety?
Yep.
How do you deal with it?
No, it's a very fair question. He's an improved player, too. Like, I thought he's gotten better year over year. He's another guy, like, again, for a lot of the things we said about Saquon, you want to keep him. Now, look, I think there is a ceiling on those guys if they can't play man-to-man on third down. Like, can they come down on the slot consistently and play man-to-man? I think that's where, like, the value is. Like, you take a guy like Kenny Moore, for example, right here in Indianapolis. Like, he is invaluable because he's so good on playing man-to-man. Like, and that's where I think Xavier's a really good player. But if you said I got to prioritize him or Saquon, that's why I would tip the scales for Saquon.
Mm-hmm. You love turf. You're good at it. So you start a turf biz. Business grows, your savings grow. Become the most celebrated name in turf. Are you ready for all that life brings?
Mm-hmm. Shane Bowen comes over from Tennessee as a defensive coordinator. You probably could not find much more of a polar opposite scheme than what they have with Rick Martindale. Not a lot of blitzing, a lot of wide nine, a lot of two safeties deep, disguise coverage. If you were to pick a couple spots that you really need to focus on in terms of adding talent on the defense to properly execute Bowen's scheme, what would it be?
Yeah, that's easy. It's getting pressure because really what they want to do, ironically, Gus Bradley's very similar here in Indianapolis. Like, you know what they're going to do, but they're going to execute flawlessly, and we're going to get home with 4. So you really want to have, like, 9 pass rushers. Like, I work with Chris Kaczarek in Miami. Chris is now the D-line coach in San Francisco. Very, like, similar, like the wide 9, depth of pass rush. And you always see them adding a guy like a Randy Gregory here. Obviously, Javon Kinlaw. Hargrave. Like, year after year, they're adding guys. And I think the mindset, if I'm the Giants and I'm committing to this, that's great. But, hey, we're adding 1 or 2 quality defensive linemen year after year, and maybe that takes some of the pressure off of the corner position.
How long do you think it's going to take this defense to adapt to this totally contrasting style? Because we all know that Dexter Lawrence had his best years playing right over the center under Wink Martindale, and that was a change. When Wink came here, he said, if he's not an all-pro under me, something's wrong. So do you think they mess with this at all?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, I think the best coaches are the ones that tweak things and say, hey, we got an A player in Dexter Lawrence. We have another player that could be an A in Kayvon Thibodeau, who I think the sky's the limit. So, how do we play to their strengths? It's a really good question, and that's why, like, the best coaches modify and tweak their approaches.
All right, I want to switch back to wide receiver. My last question here. Okay. The Giants need a number 1, right? They have good pieces. Wanda Robinson, nice slot. Jalen Hyatt, good speed guy on the outside, but they don't have that number 1 that's going to demand the extra attention, right? They might have a chance to draft one of those guys in this year's draft at the top. Roma Dunzier and Malik Neighbors. I'm going to assume Marvin Harrison's not going to be there. Very different players. Would you prefer a guy that maybe fits a little bit better in a Dunzier as that taller, traditional X, or a guy like Neighbors who can move around and is a little bit more explosive?
Yeah, I think that where the game's going, it's Neighbors. I mean, you can make an argument that maybe over Marvin Harrison. Like, I look at Marvin Harrison.
They're very close for me, too.
Yeah, and I think that's Larry Fitzgerald. You know, like, a great player, obviously a Hall of Famer. But then you look at somebody like
Neighbors.
Yeah, Malik Neighbors, and I think Tyreek Hill. You know, and, you know, like.
I get it.
And, boy, that LSU offense, like Brian Thomas, to me, he's T. Higgins. He's 6'4". You know, so
and he can move too, man.
Yeah. So to me, like, if I'm, and look, hopefully Jalen Hyatt turns out to be that guy. You know, like, and again, like, if Darren Waller's there for 17 games, like, he's another really meaningful piece for them.
Right.
So, like, I don't think the cupboard's necessarily bare there.
All right, final question from me, Mike. Coming into this combine, so many people were saying guaranteed Brock Bowers is a top 10. But now, since we've gotten to Indianapolis, I hear, well, his measurements may not be as big as we want him to be despite his talent, and maybe he's a 12 to 15 guy, like he's kind of falling all of a sudden. How do you see that?
Yeah, he'll be the first tight end. I think he's a great player. You know, I think Jim Harbaugh would love to have him. Like, I don't think necessarily at 5. And you look at, like, Dallas Turner's workout yesterday. You know, there was a great graphic. I don't know if you saw NFL Network. Like, he's faster than Jalen Hurts, for example. You know, like, and he's actually appreciably faster than Will Anderson, who was just like, you know.
And he jumped out of the building, too.
Yeah.
Crazy.
So I don't think it's a negative on Bowers guys in as much as it's like there's some other really talented players.
Right.
Giant fans love a winner. It's why they love Citizens. Named the 2022 Best Bank in the U.S. by The Banker as the official bank of the Giants and sponsor of the Huddle. Citizens is made ready for fans of Big Blue. Learn more at citizensbank.com. Mike, this is
all right. Thanks, guys.
See Mike on ESPN coverage of the Combine. We'll be back with more Giants Huddle.
How powerful is Cox Internet? Powerful enough to let your band members in Vegas, Phoenix, and Rhode Island jam like you're all in the same garage. Get Cox Internet powered by fiber with America's fastest download speeds. It's internet built for tomorrow, today. Cox, always building better. Cox Internet is connected to the premises via coaxial connection. Speeds vary and are not guaranteed. Cox terms and other restrictions may apply. Analysis by Ookla Speed Test Intelligence Data. Fixed median download speeds. US Q3 2023.
The South Dakota Stories, Volume 5. South Dakota seemed like the perfect place to unplug. But I ended up connecting to the world around me. A world where each sunset was painted, where I felt adventure's pulse with every step, and where cold water trickling, pine swaying, and grunting bison became my favorite soundtracks. I just wish I didn't have to leave. There's so much South Dakota, so little time.